Outlaw Law is brought to you by Whitaker and Hamer, attorneys and counselors at law. Your law firm for life.
The Outlaw Lawyers, Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer, are your hosts. They are the managing partners at Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm, and that firm is the power behind the program. We also have Cassandra Nicholas joining us from the Morehead City office, also an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer. And they are conveniently located Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay, Varina, Gastonia, and the aforementioned Morehead City. I'm Morgan Patrick, consumer advocate. Each and every week we get into the legalese conversation, but we're also going to give you an opportunity to get on the calendar with Whitaker and Hamer. No cost, no obligation. Simply no pressure. Talk about maybe a legal situation that you're facing. Again, we've got 15-minute consults that we are making available. We only have 5 of them this week, but the first 5 callers to 800-659-1186. That's 800-659-1186. You're going to grab one of those consults. And again, 15 minutes. You can use that for maybe estate planning. We've been talking about that today. Josh?
Yeah, and more into estate. I want to talk about, we talked about some of the reasons people don't get their estate plan done, because it's something you by human nature, it's something you don't want to do. You don't want to think about your death. You don't want to think about your young kids or your adult kids being here without you. As a human being, you want to delay it, and any reason to delay it satisfies that desire. So we were talking in the last segment how we've all at some point, Cassandra's still doing it, delaying her estate plan. Despite the fact she could whip one up, lickety split, if she hasn't done it. So we understand the hesitance in doing it. It's not on everybody's priority list, but it is a priority, because that's, one of the things the firm does is estate administration, right? So after you pass, a lot of times we're going to be meeting with your surviving spouse or your surviving kids, and they're going to be going through your stuff, trying to figure out where you make payments to, where all your bank accounts, now not everybody gets statements. That used to be something we'd get a lot of, right? People would just kind of watch your mail, like you're gone, and whoever was going to be working on your estate would watch your mail for 30 days to figure out where your bank statements were coming from, figure out, if you were paying a car note, where that was going. Because we don't share a lot of that information or as much, right? And you're not getting as much mail. So it becomes a little bit of a mystery sometimes for kids, if you have not prepared an estate plan, your adult children to come behind you and figure out what needs to be paid, what needs to be done. So we see that side of it all the time, and it makes estate planning even more important in our eyes, because we see what folks have to do once you're gone. And so I was going to talk about some of the things that you would normally put in an estate plan, right? And so the number one, arguably most important document that everybody's going to have in an estate plan is a will, a last will and testament, a will. And a will is going to say things, wills can get super specific, right? And they can say, hey, my gun collection from my uncle to my second born, and I want the house at the lake to go to this kid. And
I leave everything to my law partner.
Right. Yeah. But it can get as specific or as general as you want. A lot of times we're coupling the will with kind of a standalone trust, right? And we talk to folks about trust and what they can do. I like to say, it's not 100% true, but trusts don't die, right? So if you establish the Josh Whitaker Trust, a lot of things can be in there and kind of get to the next generation, avoiding probate, avoiding some messy transfers. Trust can do a lot of things. So sometimes wills are just pour-overs. We just say, hopefully by the time I die, everything's in the trust, but if not, my will can leave everything to the trust. And the trust can say, hey, I want this to go to the kids, and I want my wife to have this, my spouse to have this as long as she's alive. And so wills and trust are kind of the ground floor of estate planning.
Avoiding probate, you said that, and that's I think that's an important consideration. And I think that, like you said, that's the goal, is the more you can avoid probate, the less you have to involve the clerk, the less you have to make anyone do legwork, because they're already stressed out, right?
Right. And when I go sit down with if a client comes into my office and wants to talk about estate planning, I have a different mindset. If you're a younger couple with kids, or your kids are adult children who have moved out, or you're in the later stages of your life, right? I go in with kind of a different idea depending on your assets and things like that. But avoiding probate's always up there, right? If you're married, we always try to set it up so that the surviving spouse, can keep on moving without having to do very much, right? avoiding probate. Because there's tons of horror stories, right? Because if you don't do it yourself, if you don't set up an estate plan, a valid, good, understandable estate plan, a lot of bad things can happen. You won't be here, right? So you're leaving it for your kids or your spouse to deal with. But also a part of a good estate plan is going to be talking about setting up a power of attorney, setting up a healthcare power of attorney. Those are two other documents we talk about a lot because power of attorneys don't seem that important until you need one. And once you need one, you're incapacitated, you're incompetent. It's too late to do one at that point. So if you don't have a power of attorney set up so that an agent, your kids or your spouse can step in and do stuff for you, once you need it, it's too late. And they're going to have to go to the court. They're going to have to apply for a guardianship. It's the court's going to watch over assets. It's a different scenario. And so all this stuff is easy enough to do. There's of course there's some costs, there's some legal fees, there's some time because you'll have to talk to an attorney, make sure everything's executed properly. But once it's set up, it's there. You got a plan, and then we'll review it with you. Right, every year, every 2 years, we'll take a look at it and kind of review it. But that is the basic documentation set in a basic estate plan, I would say.
The Outlaw Lawyers, Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer. You can find them at Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm. They're the managing partners there, practicing attorneys here in North Carolina. Joining us from the Morehead City office is Cassandra Nicholas. We want to remind you, too, that we have 5 positions on the calendar with Whitaker and Hamer, and these positions are 15-minute consults, and there's no cost. Again, there's no pressure, folks, no obligation. Your opportunity to ask questions maybe about a legal situation that you are facing. To get one of those 5 positions, you can call 800-659-1186. That's 800-659-1186. Leave your contact information, briefly what the call's about. Again, first 5 callers, 800-659-1186. If you have any questions for the attorneys, we'll answer them on a future program. You can email the show, questions@theoutlawlawyer.com. We're back to wrap it up right after this.